In this video, we're going to talk about the main failures we have with our jazz improvisation and why, as piano students, we don't seem to figure it out. Why do we fail at jazz improvisation? Why do our solos do not sound like jazz? The main reason why we fail is because we see improvisation in terms of the chord-scale relationship. I mean, after all, everything we're taught points to that. So then we use the harmonic analysis as our starting point to build an improvisation. Let's say we have a 2-5-1. Then we say, okay, we have the Dorian scale for the minor chord, we have the Mixolydian for the dominant, and the Ionian for the major chord. So then we play Dorian, Mixolydian, Ionian. But that sounds disconnected. That's why when we try to improvise like that, it doesn't work. Well, there are two problems here. Number one is that we're jumping from scale to scale, when in reality, if we pay attention, they are all the same notes. In this case, they're all the notes of the F major scale. So just using one scale will suffice. And that will also make it simpler for our minds to be able to keep up. In this case, it's best to think of it as just the dominant scale. So then we play the Mixolydian. Now, that's better, but still, there is a problem here. And that is that the scale we use in our harmonic analysis have 7 notes, which makes them odd scales. And odd scales are not good to improvise over our 4x4 beat, because they go out of sync. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. The 7-note scales are great for analysis, but not for playing, because they don't divide well, and therefore they go out of sync. In jazz, the solution for that is adding an extra note, making them even scales of 8 notes. And those are our bebop scales. So instead of playing 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, instead of that, we play 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. But still, that's not how it's supposed to sound. If we use our scales like that, our solos will always end up sounding scaly. Let's grab the standard jazz chord progression, the 2-5-1-6. 2, 5, 1, 6. This is the progression of the continental. So when we improvise with our bebop scale, we get I mean, yes, it sounds better than using disconnected scales, but it sounds too scaly. That's not how it's supposed to sound. The bebop language sounds more like Now, that sounds like jazz. That sounds a bit more like Charlie Parker. But what is that? And how can we sound like that? Well, that is because in the bebop language, we don't improvise by playing the scales on linear motion up and down to create our solos. We use target notes instead. We're moving through the scales, but we're not playing scales. We're playing around the scales using target notes as our landing spots. And we get to these landing spots using approach notes and enclosures. But what are those? Approach notes and enclosures are melodic devices we use to develop our melodic lines. An approach note is when we approach our target note with the adjacent notes above or below. Let's say our target note is C. Then we can approach it from below or from above. Now, of course, we have chromatic and diatonic approach notes. Let's say we are on F major. Then from the bottom, we have chromatic approach and diatonic approach. And from the top, chromatic, diatonic. And then an enclosure is when we surround our target note with the adjacent notes. And we also have chromatic and diatonic enclosures. This is chromatic, diatonic. Or from below, chromatic, diatonic. Okay, in theory, that's all very nice. But now, How do we apply it in practice? How do we get from here to that phrase we just played? Well, let me show you. Let's say we have F major. Instead of that, we use our target notes to develop our melodic line. Our target notes will be the notes of the F major chord. Here we're playing F major 7. So E would also be a tonal center. So we have So now we use our melodic devices, or approach notes and enclosures, to move through these notes. F, C, A, E, F, C, A. Now, the first one is F. So we use an enclosure to F. Now our next note is C. So we use approach notes to C. So we have Now our next note is A. So we do enclosure to A. Now our next note is E. So we do approach notes to E. So we have And now enclosure to F, approach notes to C, enclosure to A. So we get enclosure, approach, enclosure, approach, enclosure, approach, enclosure. Again, that is Now, listen to the difference from this to this. It sounds like a completely different language, but let's say we play it over the continental's progression. It works perfectly because the target notes of the F major chord are tonal centers in all of the other chords of the progression. Here, F is the 7 of G minor. C is the root of the dominant chord. A is the 3rd of the major chord. Here we have the 9 of D7, 7 of G minor, root of C, 3rd of F, and we go up to the 9 of D7. And in the second part, we can go to different tonal centers. We play enclosure to B flat, which is the minor 3rd of G minor, enclosure to E, which is the 3rd of C7, now approach note to A, which is the 3rd of F major, enclosure to F sharp, which is the 3rd of D7, approach notes to B flat, which is a minor 3rd of G minor, enclosure to E, which is 3rd of C7, enclosure to F. Now, instead of just playing scales, we have Now, that's a big difference. So now you know. But it's not that you're going to grab a chord progression and start improvising like a pro. For that, you need to learn all of the musical elements, the intervals, chords, arpeggios, and scales in every key and every inversion. But at least now you know what to aim for. If you found this video useful, don't forget to give us a like and subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to learn more, you can subscribe to the course Piano for the Modern Musician at InsidePiano.com. Meanwhile, have fun with your practice, and I'll see you in the next video.